Okay, welcome. My name is James Kennedy. I am the CEO at procurementexpress.com, and in this video, I am going to run through how 3 construction CFOs got strategic and saved millions of dollars for the company, not to mention many hours of spend. So we are from Procurement Express, which is an online app for improving your procurement process. In this presentation, I'm going to be running through for you strategies which you can use in your business to improve your margin in a very practical way. These strategies are all taken from our real life examples from our existing customers, and you can hopefully by the end of this have some inspiration on how you can implement them within your own business. So there are 3 main case studies we're going to run through. The first one is from ISS, my home town of Ireland. These guys are an international company, but their Irish branch used our application to achieve over $300,000 in savings within 6 months. They went from 6 to 4 staff. They negotiated 120k in rebates, and I'm going to go through the steps they used to do that, and it was a big win for that. Don't worry though, if you don't have half a million staff, we have some other case studies for you here. I have one from Canada, Amacon Construction, which are a general contractor based out of Toronto, and they managed to transform the way they do manage their purchasing pretty easily using our system, but also they came up with some optimizations, and which allowed them at the end of the day to be able to sell more business and win more business for their company. So it's an interesting case study there because it shows you how you can use your supply chain and your purchasing power to actually end up winning more business, which isn't something that is typically thought of. And then finally, I have quite a nice case study from Clarendon Homes, another construction company, and we'll have a look at through their process, which was required in order to make sure they had good financial control over what they were building, but it was very time consuming, and we're going to show you how we slashed and made that way faster for them. So if any of those are issues that you're having in your company, you're finding it hard to win new business, you are finding that your staff are bogged down with sort of administration and kind of managing the business in terms of paperwork and so on, or straight up you're looking for ways to improve efficiencies and create hard cash savings, I'm going to run through some of the examples on this presentation. This is for CFOs and COOs at construction companies, but you could be in a facilities management company. You could be in company, it could even be hospitality or sort of retail, number of hotels, or you have a number of locations. All the stuff is still relevant for you. Typically, we focus on is sort of 20 to 500 employees. So you may not have big fancy ERP solutions. You may not have a ton of cash to spend on fancier IT solutions. And everything I'm going to show you here is very inexpensive, if free, if not inexpensive. The key thing is that if you have multiple locations, if you have multiple sites, multiple jobs that are happening, you have people out on the road making spending decisions. And if from an operations or a finance perspective, you are finding it difficult to manage that. So in other words, you're finding it if you're on a finance team, for example, you're not exactly sure if everything is getting allocated to the correct jobs. You're not really sure what should be accrued for and what shouldn't, or what the accrual should look like. You find yourself signing off the accounts and you're not 100% sure on exactly whether it's totally accurate in terms of what spend is still to come in. Is the profit really the profit, or can you really stand behind this? If that's a problem that you're having, then we're going to walk through some solutions on that. You could be on the upside where you are, you're needing to be more efficient in terms of getting the jobs done. Some needless sort of spending errors can be cropping into your process every now and again. Definitely, if sort of your team aren't properly empowered with the numbers that they need in order to make good spending decisions in advance of making any spending mistakes. If they're only finding out whether a project was profitable or not, months after the project is finished, then this is something we're going to go over as well, and this will be an interest to you. And on top of that, then, if you're in a leadership role within any of these organizations, after all, we're all in business to try and make profit, and you're looking for ways to improve that margin. We all you'll hear salespeople banging the drum about improving your sales all the time, but I'm going to give you a few reasons why you should consider looking at your existing cost base and a way to basically get the found money that's already available for taking within your business, guaranteed, if you just focus a little bit of time on your procurement process and your purchasing process. So if those are the sort of struggles and challenges you're facing within your organization, this presentation is going to be for you. Now, before I get started, we have this sort of way of looking at the world, in that really the basis for getting any of these benefits or achieving any of these results needs to be on a sound footing. And the sound footing really encompasses the three main areas that we're going to look at for this. So if I take a screen capture here, I'm just going to dive into this a little bit. And you should see my screen come up here. So within the organization, you obviously have your finance team, you have the leadership or the CEO, it could be the procurement department, and you have ops. Really, what the finance team need to be able to deliver for the leadership is accuracy in what they're reporting on. So they need to be, in order for the leadership or the procurement department to make good management decisions, they need to be confident that in the results that they're getting from the finance department are actually accurate. And in order for the ops team to be successful, in terms of the people, these are the people out on the road actually delivering a service, building, doing on the construction site, managing, hiring subcontractors, and so on and so forth. What they really need is they need to be able to use systems which are easy for them to access. So they don't need to be or shouldn't be learning how to log into accountancy systems, or if they're out in the field, even let's say they're somewhere without internet connection, they still need to be able to get information about how their projects are standing. And then finally, what the CEO needs from the ops team is really to be able to deliver those projects at a good margin, and an improving margin over time. So to achieve that, these different people have sort of different competing requirements. So on the finance side, these guys first of all need accuracy when it comes to the data that they're getting from ops. They need information on the sort of how purchases should be accrued, so that they can actually see properly put items in the right months and periods to make sure that they're providing accurate information. And they also need to work against budgets. So they need to have the correct budgeting information for all purchases which are taking place. So as you're making purchases, especially if you are working in a sort of job-based environment where you're booking costs against a particular job, you need to make sure that you are booking it against the correct job in order to see which jobs are actually turning a profit for you or not. On the CEO side, they need data, or the leadership side, they need good data to be able to make strategic decisions on the organization, which means that they need to be able to see not only in terms of the finance department will simply give you sort of a rolled up information on how it's all working, but they also need information on terms of how long is it taking to get paid. They need information on which suppliers are providing value and which ones are not. And then on top of that, they also need control. So they need to see they need to be able to make sure that spending mistakes are not happening. On the ops side, they need ease of access. So they need, tools to be able to get access to the information they need when they need it. They also need work in progress figures so that they're not working off last month's accounts or last month's results and so on and so forth. And they need to have, ease of access as well. So they need to be able to get at that data wherever they are. So let me just switch back here. So if I move on to the next slide here. So just before I go any further, I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are. So procurementexpress.com, we're a 5-year-old software company. We have our offices in Ireland, South Africa, and India and Pakistan. You see beautiful pictures there of our South African office. I wish my office in Dublin looked as nice as that, but maybe we'll work on that. And we are we have a lot of experience in this area. We've handled more than $5 billion in purchasing for our customers across a range of sectors, but specifically within facilities management and construction, where we see a lot of value. We're the most positively reviewed app of our kind, and we have 15 staff spread across those offices. We're also privately held. I'd encourage you to go and have a little Google if you haven't heard of us before. Google for our reviews. You'll see honest feedback from our existing users to say what they, give you a highlight of what we actually provide and the real value in their own words. And you can maybe have a look at that after the presentation. So everything I'm going to give you here is based on the customers that we have. Now, I would love to say that I am an expert in, I've come up with all this by myself out of my own genius, but that is, of course, not the case. We deal with hundreds of companies and we deal very closely with them in order to understand what they need from a procurement perspective. And oftentimes those customers will come back with practical ways you can improve your purchasing process. And I'm kind of just channeling that back to you. So we get the best practices from all of these companies, billions of dollars spend, and then be able to funnel it back to you so that you can implement it within your business. Of course, their logos are fine, but I always like to put up some of the faces of the people of our customers. These are the guys and girls who are providing us with the expertise to share with you. We have very much a community feel amongst our customers, and we use that to try and help one another all be successful within business. So, but let's face it, procurement, accounts, cost management has a bit of a challenge. And the challenge is that it's hard not to end up looking like a bit of a Poindexter when it comes to just telling everyone to spend less money, which of course makes sense. But sometimes you need to evangelize that idea within your organization. So I'm just going to give you a couple of quick ideas on how you can actually get your team behind treating purchasing as a vital part of the business and that can deliver more value. So let's have a quick look at 3 reasons why you should modernize your purchasing. So the first one that really gets me is this concept of marginal ROI, or what money is really worth. So if you are working in a construction project, you may well be used to working with big numbers, big figures, and it feels like small spend doesn't really make a difference. But actually, small spend makes a huge difference in terms of your actual profit. So let's take, for example, we have a $100,000 project that we're doing, small project. During the lifetime of that project, there are a range of small mistakes which can happen all the time, which really sort of take away from the project. So you might have something as simple as, you just going overspend. You needed an extra piece of equipment that you didn't think you needed before, a couple of $100. You may misallocate a cost to the wrong job. So you might allocate a couple of $100 to a job on Main Street versus Old Street, and suddenly one project looks more profitable and the other project looks less profitable. You might have some rogue spend going on within your organization because it is kind of hard to get approval for spend. Sometimes people go around the system. Other people can get a hold of your purchase order book. There's a range of reasons why rogue spend happens. Another couple of $100 can easily come off a project like that. And before long, you could have, you could easily imagine $1,500 and just like small mistakes which happen all the time, and there's a range of them that we see all the time, which may not really sound much when you're talking about a $100,000 project, but you have to consider that the industry standard for margin on these jobs is somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5%. So on your $100,000 of the total cost of the job, your company is probably only making a couple of grand from it. So $1,500 of mistakes doesn't sound like a lot compared to $100,000, but actually it's 50 to 75% of your margin on that job. And this is something that you've already got to get across to your entire team, or understand that they may feel like a couple of, $50, $100 here and there doesn't really make a difference, but it makes a disproportionate difference to the actual amount of percentage profit your company takes home. So that's why it's very important to sweat the small spend. It's fair enough to set up your project plan with the big items, the big ticket items. We all understand that, but actually it's the small spend that can really eat into your profitability. So that's a real problem. The next thing is that we're in cycles. We all know that. I just got this from Forbes last week. Another warning that the 2019 recession is coming. Now, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Some people are predicting growth in the construction industry next year by up to 20%, but they also did that in 2007. So let's face it, we all have to prepare our businesses to be lean enough for when the harder times comes, especially when you're dealing sort of low margin, high volume projects. If you don't have a finger on your purchasing and your margins, it's easy to go under, let's face it. I mean, Warren Buffett has a great expression, is that when the tide goes out, you see who's wearing the shorts. And that's pretty much true, especially in these industries where, when things are going well, everything's good, the tide goes out, there's less jobs available. Suddenly you'll see who's actually running an efficient project. And I have a case study from Amazon Construction to really go into that and explain how you can achieve that. The last thing is that our supply chain is, a really oftentimes undervalued component of our business. If you're a general contractor, you're effectively 100% made up of, the contractors that you are hiring. So, but ask yourself this question. When was the last time, for an employee, if you bring an employee into the business, you would set a goal for them, you set an annual goal, you set a salary review, you would align them to the goals of your business and so on. But when's the last time you did that with your suppliers? Have your suppliers got, KPIs? Do they understand what you're expecting to get delivered from them? And are you finding sort of ways that you can both succeed if that happens? Are you regularly reviewing your suppliers? Are there people in your organization who are all hiring from the people you've always hired from, and they all are getting a terrible service, but nobody knows? Are there suppliers who are just, it's time for them to move them along? Is there a structured way of really evaluating all those? And more importantly, letting your suppliers and your vendors know that they are being evaluated, so that on a sort of an annual, quarterly basis, you can work to train your supply chain so that you can get more out of it. Now, effectively, you're only as good as your supply chain, so you really should invest in, meeting with the most strategic suppliers, making sure that you figure out what should be done in terms of improving their performance and ultimately your organization's performance, and working together on that. Now, why don't most companies do that? I'll tell you the reason why most people don't do that is because they are bogged down with the administration. It's very hard to act tactically or strategically if you're just basically trying to keep your head above water. So we're going to go through some strategies to basically free up your team so that they can behave more strategically. They can put more effort and time into getting these suppliers, making sure you're getting the best possible team to help you win. So where do you start? Well, I've got a certificate in procurement, and the textbooks will tell you that there's loads of ways of improving your purchasing power. This thing here is called the purchasing chessboard. It's got 64 different strategies for improving how your company buys and purchases. Some of them are better than others, but it's all very academic. So I'm going to give you some stuff straight from the coalface. Let's start off with Clarendon Homes. They went from purchasing, it would take them up to 6 days to make a simple purchase to 60 minutes in turning around a PO. That was using Procurement Express. There are other software available, but certainly if you implement this sort of time saving for your staff, imagine what they can then do more to improve the margin and improve the supply chain that you're dealing with. So first thing they did was there's obvious benefits. They were coming from a paper situation, so they had lots of, they were walking paper around the building to get sign off, or not even the building. They might be going from site to site trying to get sign off for purchases. But once now that they've gone electronic, there was a number of real additional benefits as well. They helped to save. It helps them, first of all, to get rid of the purchasing. They were spending thousands of dollars a year just on paper-based purchase order books. There was a direct saving there. For the first time, their project managers had work in progress figures to allow them to better manage and bring in a better margin. They had an 80% time saving in terms of administration. And then they obviously had, and funny, this one is just, they spent less effort just keeping all these records. So they used to have, boxes and boxes of old paper purchase orders in the office stacking up, and they were able to get rid of all of that, and they were able to go 100% paperless. When you're trying to do this, going paperless sounds good, but sometimes it can be daunting, because if you are, say, a traditional way to do this is bring in a fancy ERP solution, obviously that can be very expensive. It's a big training cost. And traditionally, the benefits of an ERP solution in terms of making purchasing faster were only reserved for larger companies, bigger companies that could afford fancy IT consultants and so on, who could implement it for them. But nowadays, there's more nimble solutions that basically smaller, mid-sized companies can look at. So let's just look at how they achieved these savings. So what used to happen was they used to place orders with a supplier. A PM would initial the purchase. Then it would go on for approval from accounting to make sure the funds were there. Again, this was all paper getting walked around the place or emails flying around. PO number would eventually get generated. They would verify the invoice. It would go over back to accounting to make sure the invoice matched with the purchase order. They would receive the goods. They have to make sure everything was received. And all of this, if you can imagine each step, even if it was only 10 minutes that took of each step, and it was generally more than that, times 1,000, 1,500 purchases a month being processed by this organization, it led to days and days of wasted effort. Now, with the tools that are available these days, you can quite simply eliminate 70% of these steps just by having it all organized in one place rather than relying on that paper. And by doing that, Clarendon Homes were able to really transform how they did their business. I have a quick quote here from Hannah. It's quick and easy. It includes everything we need. Amazing to use. Now that the office can go paperless, it's so easy. I use it a lot daily. It really helps. So great. That's one strategy you can look at. Definitely, I would say that, because we're selling the software, buy some software to help you. But if you do it, just think about how much extra time your staff will have to be able to get more value out of those vendors. Doing something better with the vendors than just chasing down invoices. Your invoices are their invoices. They can actually manage them proactively. Maybe spend that time looking for new vendors to actually improve your supply chain. The next case study I have here is for Amacon Construction. So previously, Amacon is, they're based in Toronto, again, general contractor. The biggest thing that they got from implementing a software solution for their company was they, for the first time, had work in progress figures. Now, Stefan, who is the main project manager there, he gave us some of the figures here about what they achieved. And what Stefan did was he took it a step further. So that because he had work in progress figures for the jobs that were going on right now, he was able to avoid the first cardinal mistake of project management with the cost overruns. But then he took it an extra step because he was able to have much more data than they ever had before. So he was far more effective at quoting on new work. So we had valuable cost data, but previously that was stuck in all sorts of different accountancy systems. Maybe it had to build someone's shoe. There was paper everywhere. It was a little bit disorganized. It was very, very time consuming. But by having all that data together, he was able to analyze which suppliers and vendors are really delivering value, and then to then streamline his process a lot more. So when he came to winning more business, he was able to have much more confidence around what the projects would actually cost him, and that enabled him to start beating out his competition, who were still relying on hopes and prayers for properly, or rule of thumb, to properly understand the cost structure of different projects. And now when they quote for business, they're more accurate and are winning more of those jobs, and are able to take on more business as well because of the efficiencies. there were extra benefits as well. You know, they could track their budgets. They had built up a great supplier database. Now they can search for any of the suppliers at any time, search for all the items that have been bought. They're able to break that down. They have all their documentation in one place. So all the invoices, purchase orders, everything is searchable online. No more searching around for the paper. Although, you know, I have to say, in some instances, like in Amacon's case, paper isn't necessarily an all bad thing. What they like to do is put everything in the system. Then when it's ready to go to accounts, they can print it out, collate everything together. It's all automatically printed together in the right order. And then the accounts team can process things like they always have. And, you know, you can go that extra step by integrating the procurement system with your account system to get rid of the paper at all. But you know what? The account system works well with paper in their instance, and that's exactly what they're doing. So now let me just go through my favorite case study of the lot here. And this is one you can implement whether or not you're using our system. But it's a rebate story for ISS. So what they did was they first implemented, you know, that structure I showed to you earlier, where they got everyone organized in terms of one place where everyone can manage all their spending. And then they, over a 6 to 12 month period, they took 3 steps to achieve major, direct savings within their company. First of all, they enforced purchase orders with every supplier or vendor. Now, this is something you may already be doing, you know, so you may require a purchase order in order to pay an invoice. In practical terms, sometimes that works, sometimes, but I can heartily recommend to you, if it's not something you're already doing, it has many-fold benefits. It will stop a lot of overspending straight away. If the very fact that your vendors know you work on a PO system will make them more conscious of of what they are invoicing you. It will prevent silly mistakes like double paying for an invoice. It'll make sure that the cost creep is kept to a minimum. It gives you a very strong footing if you want to dispute a payment. You know, if the invoice ends up higher than the quote, you have a very strong basis for going back to them and saying, hey, listen, this is not what was on the purchase order. It will cut out a lot of that. And an added benefit is that if you send them a purchase order with your terms and conditions on it, rather than their quotation being the contract, the binding contract, the purchase order you send to them, including your terms and conditions, your payment terms, that's what is actually important. And if it ever came down to a court of law, everyone will look at what your purchase order terms and conditions were, not what their quotation terms and conditions were. So that is a legal corner case there, which is, you know, useful to have as well. So it obviously internally as well spent a lot of rogue spending, all the other benefits you get from implementing a system like that. But they went from a situation where they were using Excel to try and manage this, which is, you know, impossible for a company this size. And then they moved over to an electronic solution, which meant now that they weren't dealing with those spreadsheets and emails and phone calls and wondering who's got paid and who hasn't got paid, and they had more time on their finance team to actually invest in something else, which was the next step, which was to make ordering as easy as possible for the actual people, the operation staff. So if you make the ordering and the purchase process, you know, email less and phone call less and spreadsheet less, it makes your ops teams much more likely to be compliant with the processes you need in order to get your process streamlined. So you got to give them the tools they need to achieve this. So your ops team should have a mobile app, they should have web access, they should be able to query their own purchases, they should be able to see who's been paid, who hasn't been paid, without having to make calls to the finance team. They should certainly know what their budgets are, where their budget position is, in order that they don't have to soak up the time in the finance team and the leadership trying to get that information. It's needless. That, because it's frictionless, it's not as hard to implement, it means that the finance team will get more accurate, timely information. So they'll know when services have been ordered for, how long they've been ordered for. Creating their accrual reports makes much easier when they're signing off on the accounts or management accounts at the end of the month. They can be much more confident that they have actually up-to-date figures, and there's not, you know, phantom invoices waiting out there to jump on them somewhere. So implementing, solutions to allow your team to raise purchase orders much better eventually gets you to this scenario where you now are in a position where you're able to carry out a spend analysis. Because the data is accurate, because everyone's using it, it's up to date, you can then look at across all your customers, and you can use a tool like ours to generate reports, and you can start to see, okay, let me just look at a particular job. Which suppliers do we use in that job? Okay, now let's look at all our jobs. Are we buying the same thing from multiple suppliers? Then quite simply do a sort of an analysis of the suppliers which have the biggest input on your influence on your profit, normally who you're spending most with. And then another thing to consider as well is, who you have least risk with, who you have most choice in the market. So if you can look at your vendors who you're spending a lot of money with, but there are a lot of actually other alternatives, they're a good place to start. They're the first place people I would call with. Pick up the phone, say, hey, would you like to do twice as much business with us next year? I'm sure they would. Okay, let's talk about how you can implement a rebate strategy for that. So, and that's what that simply means is that they will agree to give you a rebate at the end of the year, 10, 15, 20%, if you can put a certain volume of business through that one company. Now, that's great. And it really works for ISS, for example, over 100 grand in direct rebates they got from their vendors. Then you have to turn around and you have to get the ops team to actually play ball with that, because it's true that you can say, okay, well, we're only buying from Grainger. We're not going to use any other supplier, but you actually have to enforce a way that makes it easier for the ops teams to know that, hey, who our preferred supplier is? It's Grainger. Are you going? And then when they come in for their sort of annual reviews, you can look at who they're spending money with. It's important not only what's been spent, but who in your organization is spending that money. So you can look at Joe over here. Joe, great, you're using our preferred suppliers all the time. Great. What about Mark? Mark, where aren't you? You got to have that data. You got to know who's spending with your preferred suppliers and who's not, in order to successfully implement this. And we have great tools for doing that within our system that gives your ops teams the flexibility to go outside it when they need to, but also encourages them to use the right suppliers all of the time. So that's the strategy. So in summary, if you're using POs consistently, you can make your budget holders accountable for where they are spending that money, and then they can make the spend control much easier, which ultimately will improve your margins, reduce wastage, and remove a lot of busy work from the accounts team, so that they can actually do some of the more strategic tactical work that you need to achieve. So there's different ways of, there's a few benefits I've gone through here. You can obviously try and do this with spreadsheets and email, and certainly a lot of people do it that way, or the purchase order book, which is still very popular out there. But there are, you may or may not be aware that far more modern, effective solutions that are available today, which can help you achieve all of these benefits and many more, without soaking up a bunch of your staff's time. We have a solution in the market which has the highest adoption rate. So in other words, we know that our customers are the happiest with our tool than our competitors, and we can see that in the reviews that we get. We get the feedback every day. The number, a big concern you have when you introduce a new process in your organization is, well, will this be successful? Will people actually use the system? And I can tell you that if you implement a tool like Procurement Express, your operations team will be thanking you. They will be so grateful that it makes it so much easier to get their purchases done, go down from a week to 60 minutes to get a purchase approved. Who wouldn't like that? Your finance team will appreciate the fact that now they're actually getting accurate, timely information from ops and vice versa. And your leadership will finally in a position to actually do something about this spend, actually improve the spending, approach the vendors, execute other strategies to try and improve margin. So our solution is a modern, value for money solution. Really has a guaranteed ROI, which I'll get back to in a second on that. It's built for mobile workers, and it enables you to achieve big savings within your organization. So again, this is for CFOs, ops, accountants, generally within, construction, facilities management, or if you have a number of locations, a number of different locations you're spending money across. Typically in your business, you might be running on tight margins, who doesn't want more margin? But if you have tight margins in your business, again, this is really something I cannot recommend enough for you to look at. Now, we have an almost embarrassing list of testimonials here. I've just got through them, a few of them here. You can search them online. Basically, we got a lot of 5-star reviews from people who have taken the move from paper and spreadsheets and emails, and they've gone on to using a system like ours. And I just talked to a guy yesterday, who manages a number of different departments in a local municipality. And he was telling me it's totally transformed the way they're doing business. Their fuel bill alone has gone down, where they used to spend money, driving from place to place, getting purchase approval for different things. Even their fuel bill has gone down since they've implemented our solution like ours. So I'll encourage you to go and look at all of the ratings online. Thank God they're over now. But there's one more thing. I can tell you, in the first 80 days of having implemented our solution, you'll spend 80% less time dealing with your vendor queries, 80% less time getting approval for spend. You'll bring your approved spend under control, and you'll get a clear idea of your work in progress figures for your operations team. It will get rid of inaccuracies and the guesswork, and it'll give you a lot more time to work on what's important in your business rather than the administration. The features of what we offer has a wide range, and I'm going to go through some of the top ones here. We have built-in features for managing budgets against jobs. We have catalog management, so you can manage the items and inventory that you're ordering from your vendors. There's some contract management features in there as well. We have invoice processing to help you process invoices. And actually, in quarter 2 2019, we're going to have automated invoice matching as well. We have punch outs, which is very popular, which is a way of allowing, if you're ordering from online stores, you're able to create purchase orders automatically from the shopping carts of those stores. It saves a lot of time, improves accuracy again, makes it a big hit with the people who are actually ordering. And then we have supplier management, mobile access, app access, and a lot more. So now I will say that we take on up to a maximum of 25 customers a month. So if you're watching this video, it's best to be talk to the sales team earlier in the month rather than later. We are working on increasing that, but in order to avoid disappointments, you should definitely talk to one of our sales team soon. I have a bonus for you. If you're watching this video and you've gone this far, thank you very much for listening to me. I appreciate it. We have free automated invoice matching for the first 90 days. So what that means is that rather than you having to, send in your invoices from office to office by post, God forbid, or email them or whatever, you just be able to email them all to a centralized inbox, and we will automatically attach the invoice to the correct purchase order, and the AP team then will get a nice list of invoices which are ready to approve, which they can go through and approve and pay as necessary. And that's normally an extra cost, but we're going to give you 90 days access if you just mentioned that you've watched this video. We have a guarantee. It's 100% guaranteed that we will achieve ROI for you. If you don't get ROI in the first 6 months, we'll give you some free rebate training. If that doesn't work, there's a no quibble money back guarantee. But I'm fully sure that if you are working on the finance team, on the upside team in one of these industries, we'll definitely transform things for you, and you'll be thanking us in terms of the extra time that you have available. So at the end of it, you'll have accurate, fast, transparent spend control. You'll have free automated invoice matching if you take advantage of that offer. Pricing is from $25 per user per month. We take on 25 new customers a month, and we'll guarantee that we'll get you a 10x ROI over time, which should be straightforward, or your money back. So that is a summary of the benefits. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two about how to improve your margin at your business. My direct email is james.kennedy@procurementexpress.com. If you have any questions, we have a support team which is available all the time at support@procurementexpress.com. And I'd encourage you to book a demo right now with one of our sales team, so that we can see, we can get a better understanding of what your needs are, and we can start helping you today.